Do you avoid conflict at all costs? Do you say yes even when you want to say no because you want their validation? Do you say things like, oh, I just want to have peace with them, even if it oversteps your boundaries? Well, if you said yes to any of these questions, you might be following along the lines of being a people pleaser. In Matthew 6:24, it talks about how we cannot serve two masters. And serving two masters causes things like stress, causes things like anxiety, and something you guys already know, it can cause things like people pleasing. Now, don't get me wrong with people pleasing that I'm trying to explain. I'm saying it in the sense of it actually being bad, because there can be a really good people pleasing, and then there can be a bad people pleasing. The people pleasing we're going to talk about is the one where even if it affects you, even if it causes you a lot of negative things, you will still do it because it pleases another person. And that is a place where you don't want to be, because it's very unhealthy. It's not good for your spiritual, it's not good for your mental. And the thing is, as I always say, when I speak to y'all, I speak to myself as well, because I can find myself sometimes even saying yes when I want to say no, or want to keep peace between myself and somebody else, so I don't respond the way where it expresses myself as well. Not in the sense of getting mad at them, but expressing yourself in the way that you know it wouldn't necessarily bring as much peace as you wanted to, but in the sense of you actually speaking up for how you feel about something, or speaking up on what are your thoughts on it, instead of just accepting it even if it affects you. You know what I mean? So hopefully in this video I can sort of explain those things to you guys, and God willing, you guys are touched as much as it touched me, because like I said, when I speak to y'all, I'm also learning, and I teach myself with these videos as well. So, but one point I really wanted to touch on was we cannot be fully devoted to the approval of others and be fully devoted to the approval of God as well. Trying to be fully devoted to two things, it will cause you a lot of stress, because people pleasing is so much different than pleasing God. A lot of the times people don't even care what you have to say. People just hear what they want to hear, and regardless on what you tell them, they will still come at you with the exact same thoughts regardless on how you feel. So trying to please people like that is not necessarily a healthy thing, but trying to please God and doing the will of God only, but not discarding people pleasing, because like I said, there is a healthy people pleasing. Just pleasing God in this life is something that is going to cause you a lot of peace. It's going to cause you a lot of loss in the sense of friendships and relationships with other people, but I'd rather gain something from God and lose somebody, or lose a friendship, than continually have a friendship but it's not benefiting me in any way. It's more of bringing me down than actually benefiting me. That's where I'm kind of at with this. It's doing God's will instead of people's will for you. And you got to understand, with people pleasing, when you want to please somebody so much, you start to devalue your values. You start to devalue what you think is right, what you think about a certain situation, how you feel about a certain situation. You just want to agree with that person, or you want to align yourself with their thoughts just to make peace with them. And to an extent, that's not healthy. To an extent, that can cause you more effect than actually benefits. So that's kind of what I'm on that point. And the people pleasing as well, you just got to understand, like, it's none of their business. Like, I don't want to sound rude, or I don't want to sound like, oh, he just kind of thinks he's... Nah, honestly, it's literally none of their business. What you got going on in your spiritual life, what you got going on at church, it's not necessary for everybody to know. Now, there's specific people that if you feel trust in them and you can confide in them to tell them the situation, but as long as you're comfortable doing so, but trying to explain yourself to everybody trying to prove yourself to everybody. You got to understand that at the same time, it's literally, it sounds so like straightforward and kind of rude, but it's literally none of their business. People pleasing will make everybody happy but you. And once you start to people please so much and try to be good in everybody's eyes, you start to not be sure about yourself, and then you start to put people's opinions and expectations into your identity. And that's not where we want to be, because if you're going somewhere or you're doing something based off just making other people happy, but you're not genuinely happy, how will that affect you? How will that treat your mental? How will that treat your spiritual life, your relationship with God? It's much more than pleasing people, bro. Like, you got to put yourself first. It sounds selfish, but you got to put your relationship with God, you got to put God's will in your life first. There's a lot of people that when you're happy, they're going to be unhappy. That's just how it's going to be, because there's people like that. There's people that are going to be jealous, obviously. They're going to be angry that you're happy. But the thing is, you got to understand, again, it's literally none of their business. And also with people outside of, like I was saying, the people that you trust in and the people that you confide in, not everybody has to know your personal life. A lot of people that are like, oh, you can trust me in this area. You can tell me these things, but if you know how they are, you don't feel like telling them because you don't feel that much trust, you don't have to tell them. You don't have to tell them. They can say, oh, tell me. And you not telling them can make them upset. But the thing is, your spiritual life is more important. Your mental is more important. Your relationship with God is way more important. And it's okay to be like, oh, be happy for me instead of hate on me. But the thing is, there's no need to explain yourself. There's no need to explain your personal life to certain people. There's no need to explain what's going on. If God knows and you've given it to God in prayer, not everybody has to know. And it's just that simple. You gotta understand, we are only serving the Lord. We serve others trying to reflect Christ. You gotta understand, like, regardless on how much you people please, regardless on how much you do good things, regardless on how much you say yes when you should say no, people will take advantage of you. People will take advantage of, oh, he says yes in this, I'm gonna use him for this, so then he can do this. And the thing is, once you start to people please, and you do it to every single person, people start to have opinions on you about that. People start to judge you about that. People start to, like I said, take advantage of you. And when we're in that mindset, we start to lose ourselves. And then slowly, we give pieces of our people pleasing to everybody. But then the thing is, we're giving ourselves away, but then we're not full, or we're not whole in Christ. We're not full in our relationship with God. We're more trying to please others rather than trying to understand our emotions, trying to understand how we feel, rather than putting your emotions aside and trying to please everybody. There has to be, everything is to a certain extent. Everything in excessive is not always healthy. People pleasing, trying to get out the mindset of people pleasing, you got to understand and try to think like, it doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what people say of you. Like, it's different if it's coming from a person that's led by God, but if it's coming from an outside he said, she said thing, come on now. Like, are we mature, or are we going to be immature about these things? He said this, she said this. Okay, where do we go from here? They don't know my personal life, so they can't make an assumption or expectation about my life. So it doesn't matter. And it's just like that. It's none of their business to begin with. And it doesn't matter because they don't know you. So if they don't know you, why are we taking into consideration their opinions on you? And a prime example of just pleasing God and living on earth to please the Lord is Jesus. Jesus died looking like a sinner, but he was perfect. But the reason why he looked like a sinner is because people perceived him as one. But the thing is, he was doing God's will the whole time. So with people pleasing, regardless on what you do, regardless on how good your relationship with God is, regardless on how good you're doing at your job, regardless on how good or how healthy your family is. People are always going to have something to say regardless, and it's not always going to be positive. So if they did things like this to Jesus and he was perfect, what makes you think that they're going to not say something about you? It's bound to happen, and that's just life, honestly. But to think that regardless on what you do, people are going to say something, you got to have the mindset of, it doesn't matter what people think of me if God thinks I'm valuable, if God thinks I'm important. If God thinks I'm important and valuable, why should I care what people think of me if what God tells me is greater? A person's opinion shouldn't affect my life. A person's assumption of my life shouldn't affect my life or my spiritual life. Because if you know it's not true, there's no need to prove yourself. There's no need to explain yourself. They can take that assumption and that opinion with them all they want. But if you know it's not true and God knows who you are and God knows your heart, there's no need to say anything. You pray for them and you ask God to see what you can do in your heart to see if it's actually true. But there's no need to explain yourself on why they're saying these things. And another thing with Jesus knew his assignment, and Jesus did the will of God, not the will of what people wanted him to do. I have to take that into I have to take my words into consideration as well. You can't please God and people at the same time. It's just not going to work. You either choose to please God or you choose to please people. Now, it's important that we're pleasing people to be around and reflect Christ while doing so, not trying to reflect someone else to be somebody else. We shouldn't be pleasing everybody, but we should be pleasing people to be around, because we should be reflecting Christ wherever we go. And reflecting Christ is going to irk some people. Like I said, Jesus was perfect, and they perceived him as a sinner. They perceived him as a person that was doing wrong. People are going to say something regardless. And once you stop people-pleasing so much, and you start doing the will of God, you slowly start to receive that freedom. The thing is that freedom comes when we no longer need to be somebody special in somebody's eyes, because we know that we are lovable and good enough, because Jesus says so. We cannot continue to live in the pretend life of an unhealthy concern of what people think of us. I said, you cannot please everybody. You cannot please this person. You cannot please that person. You cannot please this person while doing the will of God too. The will of God is going to separate you from a lot of people. The will of God is going to separate you. But the thing is, once you do the will of God, there's going to be more opinions about you. There's going to be more assumptions about you. Like, oh, what does he do outside of church? Does he really serve Christ? I wonder if he reads his Bible. I wonder if he prays. That's none of people's business. If you feel like you're comfortable and you can confide in that person and do so. But you got to understand, it's none of their business. And I'm going to say this a lot because I have to apply it into my own mind as well. But literally, it's none of their business. The thing is, like I was saying, this is the unhealthy form of people pleasing. Ask God to help you discern the right form of people pleasing, because there is a right form to please people, like serving others, reflecting the love of Christ to others. And we have to really ask God in prayer and read his word to understand what the right form of people pleasing is. Because don't get me wrong, you're gonna people please, but it has to be to a certain extent, so we can further do the will of God in our lives. And that's the acceptable people pleasing. As we continually people please the unhealthy way, we become addicted to people's opinions of us, because we wanna seem like this perfect person, when in reality the only one perfect is Jesus. And we already talked about what they perceived him as. We become addicted to what people think, and then we try to align ourselves with people's opinions of us, so we start to pretend to be someone else we're not. It's going to cause you a lot of anxiety, because you're going to feel like, oh, I don't meet the mark in this person's life. Oh, I don't meet the mark in this in this person's opinion. But if we just do the will of God, if we take action in our relationship with God, there's no need to fit in with an opinion. We just love God, and God will refine us. God will allow us to change based off our love for Him. But we have to put in the effort to change also, you know? And I'm going to end with these 2 bullet points. First point, setting boundaries isn't mean, it's healthy. And second bullet point, putting God's will in front of people's will isn't selfish, it's righteous. And don't forget that, yo. Alright? Alright. God bless everybody that watched this video. If you are new, God bless you. If you're not new, God bless you. It's the same thing for everybody. But, alright, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys are blessed by this video. Peace out, y'all.